Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about faking it. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, have you ever faked it until you made it? Uh, I don't really know what you're asking here, dude. Honestly, the thing is, I suspect that depending on your definition, I did do that when I started because I have made some employers very unhappy when they hired me, especially in the early days when I was a junior and so forth, because I couldn't meet expectations or I had a certain like weakness in something that they thought was extremely important and so forth. So I'm pretty sure, like I like to call it buyer's remorse. It's not like I try to fake things usually because I've never tried to, well, at least never consciously try to oversell my own competence or anything like that. That might be what you're referring to, that people are trying to do that. I have personally never done that, or I can't recall a time when I have done that, at least not intentionally. But I'm pretty sure at least a few people have gone, oh, yeah, he said that he knew this and he knew that, but I thought that he meant that he knew it better than he does, or things like that. For sure, that's happened many times. I am 100% like certain that because I know some people who have made comments about that in my past and so forth. For them, luckily enough, I'd like to think that at least more people have appreciated my or like felt that I had an appropriate skill level, like even in the early days. So that's probably why I'm still here and I still find employment and so forth. And on average, I don't make friends with everybody, I'm sad to say, but I usually make friends. I've always found that I get along better with the people who are like super, super, super solid and like really usually like fairly high skill, but I have a harder time dealing with people who have like a little bit of a lethargic aptitude and sort of just do this for because it's a job type of thing. The sort of people who, as I mean, I still respect that choice, and I've made that very clear to everybody I've ever worked with, even to the people I feel like, yeah, this is not really working out for us. That I don't view these things as a competition. Like to me, it's not a competition to be the best in the team or something like that. It's about personal investment. So, as the thing that I usually refer to is that if you want to do this as a job, then in my opinion, the only requirement that should be on you is that you can fulfill the expectations of the team or the company or so forth. And that is not the decision that I should make. It's something that it took me a while to get mature enough into, and it's actually very recently where I've seen people sort of behave this way, where I have other coworkers who complain about the performance of someone in my team, and they feel this and that, and like actually say like you need to perform better, etc., etc. And I say to them, it's not your decision to make. It's not your call to make. Just treat it as that. It's the engineering manager or the product manager and so forth. You can of course voice your concerns if you feel very strongly that it's taking time and so forth and so forth. And of course you should if you feel strongly about it. But fundamentally, I argue it's better to not get emotionally invested, because if my company wants to pay someone who might not be, say, obviously most people perceive themselves, or like a lot of people perceive themselves in such a situation that, oh, I'm better than this person or that this person is underperforming. Well, that might be your perception, and that might be completely right for all I know, but it's really not the case. Like, imagine it yourself. Let's say that a bodybuilder starts in a firm, like in a moving firm or something like that. Like, if they're gonna go around being angry at all the irregular Joes who like don't really work out as much as they do, like they can't lift as much and so forth, it's sort of a mismatch, right? It's like if you have star players or people who are like really really good playing like at the lower leagues or something like that, it's sort of forgivable that they don't perform at the same level as these star players. So their frustration is a little bit misplaced, I argue. And it's the same thing here, because I mean, if the best of the best in the industry always have a requirement that everybody else in their team should be at their skill level, then they're going to have a really tough time, because most people, software developers, they just do this as a job. But as for people who are not me, like I have seen people who have been trying to do these sorts of things, and usually it works only if they're in a position where, as I've mentioned in a few videos before, where they can't be accurately evaluated. So let's say, for the sake of argument, that you have an entire team of people who are not really all that good at what they do. And then you might have a product manager or a stakeholder where the requirements are like super, super low. And that's I've seen many, many times, guys. Like some of the most horrendous projects I've ever seen have been going on for years. And I can't imagine how the people who wrote this, like the software and maintain it and so like they have such ad hoc processes and like so many problems and so many issues, and nobody ever really seems to wonder why they have all these issues where other systems do not have that issue. And that is, as I said, like if the stakes are low enough, you can basically be completely incompetent and have a job as a software developer. I usually don't see that all that much because I've been fortunate enough to work mostly with people who are fairly good. I've had one or two people who are like really, really subpar, even though they seem to be good. But it was not because I argue I never got the sensation that they tried to trick me into believing that they knew something or so forth and so on. It's not like they faked, as I've said on many occasions. If I'm in an interview with you, you're gonna have to be pretty gosh darn good to fake your skill level with me, because like it's really, really hard to like fake your way into a company if the interviewing process includes people who are really knowledgeable about software development. And I mean, I don't care how many years you have worked. I've talked to people who have like 20 plus years of work experience, and they speak with the the confidence of someone with that experience. But my trick is very simple, and that is to ask them specifics about things related to the work. And that's usually something that you can't fake. That it doesn't matter how confident you are, how many, they usually spew about my CV, all the roles and the projects I've worked on and I've led and I've done this and this, and none of it is actually hands-on stuff that they've been doing. And as soon as I break it down to that level, everything just crumbles immediately, because all of their like the posturing and so forth, as I like to say, guys, the easiest way to determine if someone's real, not like real when it comes to knowledge, they really know their stuff, is to determine how high a level do they put their conversation. Really, really high level, like at where everything is just a fluff, where they say I've vaguely worked with this and stuff, like they're never specific about anything, nothing concrete. That's usually a person who don't really have all that many hands-on skills, and that is how fakers, quote unquote, usually try to convince you that they know something. It's not necessarily that they're doing it intentionally, but that is usually the way it goes. And that's why I try to tell like people who do interviews, get good at asking questions. Like don't just ask like how would you solve, like you try to avoid questions in an interview that allows a really big space for the answer, where like it's not very pointed questions. Like for example, do you know, if we take JavaScript as my favorite example, do you know how a promise works? Can you tell me what a promise is and why we use them? That's a very specific question to a very specific area within the tool chain, and there's no way for you to start going on. Like usually it's going to be really hard for you to go on this like long or sort of rant where you just talk about these very vague terms and so forth and so forth, because that's usually what the fakers do. They try to be fluffy about anything because they don't really know stuff, but they can talk a good talk. And I mean, that's enough to trick an uninformed person. And I'm very aware of that tactic. I've seen it 100 times before, and that's why I have sort of tried to perfect my ability to determine, because in an interview you only have an hour or something like that to determine if this is a good person or not. So as you can imagine, if you ask like what was your biggest achievement, something like that, well, they're gonna, a talker like myself, I can eat your whole hour with that question, no problem. I can just blab on forever and ever. You're never going to figure out if I even know how to write software. So what I want you to take away from this is that I've never consciously faked it, but I'm pretty sure I've introduced buyer's remorse to at least one or two people when I've worked and so forth. And I see it, it's not just me, guys. I see this all the time, even in people who are like super, super experienced. It wasn't like just a few weeks ago. And I actually warned my manager at that time, like that this person, he has 15 years as a Java developer, but we're going to ask him to learn .NET in this situation. And he said he's not going to do it. Like I got my vibe from him. Like I've talked to him enough to know that he is experienced, but he's fundamentally unmotivated. So you're just going to waste your money. didn't take all that long for him to sort of realize, my manager, that yeah, that was actually the case, so we had to get rid of him. He didn't fake, like his knowledge or anything like that. And this, the same thing goes for when we talk to him, like, are you willing to learn .NET? And so, yeah, of course he's willing to learn .NET, but when you ask him about it, but when we're actually in the situation, he's not fast enough for like all of these sorts of things, right? And the same thing goes for in interviews. Like, I talk to developers all the time who, some of them like are, you know, used to working at a very low level, and in some cases they get a little bit, you know, they get they're a big fish in a small pond. That's a good example, where they believe that they have fairly good skills. Like, I mean, I do as well. And I'm not sure if, like, if I went to one of the FAANG companies and I interviewed with one of their most senior software developers, maybe I would get a really big reality check, and they go, "Oh, Fredrik, don't you know all of these things as well? We can possibly hire you." That's not me faking my knowledge, like, because I of course believe that I know my craft because I've been doing it for a long time. So if you do it at a really low level, for example, and then you try to get into a company that does it at a much higher level, yeah, there's a mismatch there. And that might be a cold shower for you. Usually it's a very benign thing. But if you want to get to the fakers, you want to really nail it, make sure that your interviewing questions are not like that. The answer that you can get back is a small one. Because if you ask these really big questions, like, as I said, what's your biggest strengths or things like that, the people who really do know how to fake it, that really have the charisma and mannerisms and so forth, they can just talk forever on that one question, and then you end up with just one or two answers that doesn't really tell you if they know anything about the specifics related to the craft. Usually those specifics you can mix a little bit, but those specifics are really important. So ask yourself that. If you want to find the fakers, ask yourself which concrete topics, like concrete things in the programming language, delivery pipeline, Kanban board, or like Scrum and stuff like that, these specific rituals or tasks or pieces of knowledge that you know that only people who really know their stuff will be able to answer that specific thing. Like, make sure that you have a few of those, because if they start stuttering or getting like unsure about that, that's usually someone who doesn't really know what they're talking about. Have a great day.